What? What's up? How's it going?
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the So I Was Thinking podcast.
Yeah.
I'm Felipe. This is
Rowan Keeley.
We are so glad you're joining us today. Rowan, we're in a different location.
Yeah, how did we get here?
Chris lost his house at bingo last week.
Oh, no. We thought he was the champion, but it turns out.
You got to go out on top, and he thought he was invincible. He bet the recording studio, and his grandma got it all back. So,
man, Patrice at the nursing home really kicked his butt.
Patrice or Beatrice?
Patrice.
That's her street name.
That's her bingo name.
Oh.
But, yeah, where are we today, Felipe?
Hey, today we have a brand new sponsor. We are so excited. We just want to take a quick second. Shout out Cool Beans Coffee Shop on the east side of Madison. It is one of the best coffee shops in Madison. Cool.
Clearly.
Vibes.
It's all vibes.
It's all vibes. Great coffee. And
Shout
they
out
serve
vibes.
lunch. Shout out vibes. Shout out lunch. They serve really good lunch, really good coffee, and they have some of the best coffee staff in town. So if you're ever looking for a place to, study, if you're ever looking for a place to
Just
chill,
relax.
yeah, by the they have a fireplace right here. You can't see it; it's off camera. My
Okay.
good friend Jen, who works here, is sitting by it, getting nice and toasty with a show while we record. Thank you, Jen. You're the best. Maybe she'll make an appearance later. And she probably won't. Not unless she wants to. I don't know. Okay, she's good. She said she's good. But yeah, thank you, Cool Beans. We are so excited. You get some Cool Beans. Is this a thermos? This is a thermos. You get a Cool Beans thermos to fill it with Cool Beans coffee and lattes, and you get a quiche on the side, which is like an omelet. It's an
Omelet pie.
omelet pie. Omelet pie.
There you
And
go.
as always, this episode is brought to you by Rabbit Hole Records. If you want to record an album, Chris is your man. If you want to record a podcast, I guess you can borrow him. We'll charge a rate, and so will he. And then if you like, this is going to be a good one.
Oh, I can feel it.
If you've ever wanted to record the annoying parents at kids' sports
Ooh.
and play it back in high fidelity, Chris is your man. By the way, you can also hire me to be an annoying parent as a background to say, why is my kid not playing?
You know, Felipe is one of the best soccer moms that I've ever met, personally.
Yeah.
So
10 out of 10 soccer
use
mom.
me as a reference. Felipe's your man if you want a soccer mom. He's got the body, let me tell you.
I don't even know what that means.
All right, so what are we talking about today, Felipe?
That's a good question. Let's scroll up so I can see what we're talking about. Today's
Defining God.
defining God.
What does that mean? Why do we need to define God?
Listen, recently on social media and recently in conversations and just a lot of stuff going on in culture, I feel like there's a lot of people, let's call it, well, the popular term now, right, is deconstructing your faith. And what it should mean is that you are taking the ideas of what you believe and you're weighing it against what the Bible says, and you're figuring out whether or not what you believe or what you've always believed is what you still believe, and whether it lines up with what you read in the Bible. What most people are doing nowadays, however, is they'll say, hey, I'm deconstructing my faith, which means I've heard this my whole life. I don't believe in it, and I don't think it lines up with what I want it to. And so I'm going to make up my own version of Christianity. And that's dangerous. I don't like that at all. And so we thought, why not talk about who God is? How does he define himself? Because that's important. Right? Because I don't think we can put our own definitions on God. We can't come to the table with preconceived notions and ideas about who God is, because the Bible is very clear that God has already defined himself. God has introduced himself to us, and we get to know him as he is, and we don't have to guess. And because he's God, we also don't get to come up with like these random ideas like, well, I think God is this. I think God allows that. I think God blah, blah, blah. No, Like there are very clear things about God's character and his person that he's revealed and to us that we get to know. And so I thought for the sake of conversation, we would kind of tackle those questions and kind of talk a little bit about who God says he is.
Yeah, and I think a great way of thinking about it is just like any other relationship, right? So me and Felipe have we're workplace acquaintances, strictly that, nothing else, not friends. But I know Felipe as he's.
No, I'm kidding.
I know Felipe as he's like revealed himself to me, right? So like I know Felipe's from New York. I know Felipe needs glasses. I know Felipe loves Queen because that's what he's told me, right?
Yeah.
If I go around saying like Felipe's moving to Brooklyn and then someone goes up to Felipe and they're like, "Oh, so you're moving to Brooklyn?" He's going to be like, "No, I'm not." And it's kind of the same thing that we're doing like with God. If we want something to fit with fit with our faith that God specifically says that like is not okay, we kind of say, "Oh, God," we try to justify it like, "Oh, God definitely thinks this," right? When like if you go in really in depth and define God, that's not the case at all. God like is very clear with what he's for and what he's against. And so when you try to like tack on other things in your life that you want to justify, you start creating almost like a false God.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's dangerous because, again, going back to how we introduce ourselves, like, like I know Rowan only as Rowan has allowed himself to be known. So, like, I can't make up facts about Rowan, and as well as I know Rowan, like, I'm not going to go tell people that Rowan's birthday is January 4th, right? I'm not going to go around telling people that Rowan's favorite color is red, although he will, and then he'll take it back a few weeks later. Well, that's a different story for a different episode. But, and we do the same thing with God. God has clearly revealed himself, and God has clearly, outlined, like guidelines for relationship and, like just in any relationship, God is like, this is who I am. And I think at times when we're wrestling with our faith or when we're just trying to fit our idea of who God should be onto God, then we get some really wacky things that we think God is when he's clearly said that he isn't. Mm-hmm. So really that's what this episode is about. We want to talk about really who God has already said that he is.
Ooh. Yeah. So I think like I think today we're going to just like define God. Let's do it. Let's use the Bible to kind of define God. So number one, God isn't like the universe. He's not like an energy living throughout us. Like no.
Absolutely not.
He is a being, right? He's not like astrology.
Yeah. God is not good vibes. He's not good energy. He's not the universe, man. He's not. We're not all God, and we're not all connected, and we're all God in some way. Like that's.
Yeah.
If that were so, I genuinely think he wouldn't be God because he defines himself as living outside of creation. He is creator. He is not part of creation. And although he was present in creation, although we are created in his image, God exists as creator and we as creation. Mm-hmm. Right? So he is not part of his creation in that sense. And I think that there are some very defining characteristics of God that we can see in the Bible as we read through, where God is just very clear, like, yo, this is what I'm like. So one of those things right off the bat that I think we need to understand, that kind of helps us understand the whole idea of God being creator and being different than us, is that God defines himself first and foremost as holy. Right? Mm-hmm. Like he is pure, he's set apart, he's separated completely from sin. And we see that in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. The angels are sitting around the throne room of God, and they say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. So we have angels declaring that God is different, that God is separate than them, that God is not like them. And then in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 1 and 2, the Lord said to Moses, speak to all of Israel and say to them, be holy because I, the Lord, your God, am holy. He was calling them to be set apart because he is set apart. He is different. And I think it's important that we understand that, because if we try to make God like us, God is not holy. I'm not holy. I promise you I'm not holy. Driving for 15 minutes on the Beltline today, I promise you I'm not holy.
Yeah, because we have a whole episode about this, but like, what is holiness to begin with? It's like purity. It's being separated completely from sin. And as hard as we can try, because we're called to be holy, we cannot accomplish that by ourselves. But God is already holy. And this is going to be important later, but God is completely separated from sin. He is without sin. He is without like defect. He is perfect. And I think that's important when we try, because we often try to like convert God into our own eyes and our own perspective. And I think the problem with that is that we end up giving God like these human defects, like where he's not completely separated from sin.
Yeah.
Because, and we'll get to this later, but God hates sin. He does not like it. And so like with making him a human with our problems, we end up giving him these kind of defects.
Exactly.
And they just misrepresent like who he is.
Yeah, and then like, although we can say this, that if we understand God correctly, then Jesus is God, right? And Jesus is an interesting person because he is God made flesh. And so Jesus is 100% human and 100% God. And in that sense, Jesus does have, I guess you could say, like, you can see obviously moments in the Bible where Jesus is 100% human, right? Like, he goes and fasts for 40 days and he was hungry. Like, there are times where Jesus is on the boat with his friends and he falls asleep. Jesus gets tired. Like, Jesus sleeps, Jesus gets hungry, Jesus cries over the loss of a friend. Like, there are clearly human elements of Jesus, but Jesus is also fully God. He was still somehow one of us and somehow completely different than us at the same time, right? So much so that, like, he felt compassion towards sick people, but he would touch them and they would be healed, right? Or, he can feel compassion towards blind people, spit on some dirt, make some mud, put it on their eyes and say, go wash your eyes, and they would be healed. Like, fully man, compassionate in every way, but fully God, able to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for us to understand. And so much, and let's I'm going to jump ahead right here in our notes, but the Bible tells us more that God is holy than that God is love. And this is an important one. I think we should skip and hit this for a second. That does not mean that God is not love, but his defining characteristic is not that God is just lovey-dovey. Like,
yeah.
And that's an example of one thing that, like, we try to put on God. Like, we try to make God seem like, oh, he's so loving. Yes,
he loves
absolutely.
you for who you are.
Yep, absolutely. But because he is holy, because he is set apart, his holiness supersedes his love. So, like, even though God loves you, he looks at Moses and he says, don't come any closer. You can't look at me because I'm so holy. I'm so different. If you even see me, you'll die. Like in the tabernacle, like when the priests had to go in and offer their sacrifice, only one person could go, and that person had to have showered, that person had to have been blameless without sin, that person had to have like fasted, and that person had to go in without a stain on their underwear. Otherwise, he would die in the Holy of Holies and they'd have to drag his dead corpse out. Like, God is so holy. Yes, he is love. God is 100% love. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, right? That whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. 1 Corinthians 13, right, talks about what love is. And you can easily separate that. Love is kind, love is gentle, love is patient, love is enduring, love does not insist in its own way. You can easily represent the word love with the word God. And God is also all of those things. But God is holy. And in the Bible, he reveals himself as holy more than he does as love, to remind us, like, yes, I love you. Yes, I died for you. Yes, I want relationship with you, but I am not like you.
Yeah, and this is also the importance of the statement Jesus made, which is go and sin no more. Because if God and Jesus are holy and separated completely from sin, and they call us holy, then that means our goal is to be completely separate from sin. So if before Jesus we're living in sin consistently, and so then we decide to accept Jesus as our Lord and Savior and pick up our cross, then we need to separate ourselves from our sins.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of us miss because we're like, oh, God loves me for the way I am. Like, God loves just like me, and He's so gracious and so kind. Like, I can kind of do whatever I want, and His grace and mercy is there. Like, no, He wants you to be completely separate from sin. He wants us to be
Absolutely.
a holy people.
Absolutely. So such good points. What's the next point, Rowan?
God is independent.
Mm.
He does not need us, and yet He still desires relationship with us. We see in John 1 through 5. Oh, no. Oh, no. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made. In Him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So we see right away, in the beginning, it was God. God has been there in the beginning, and He'll be there in the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, God doesn't need us to survive. We're not giving Him anything other than glory, right?
Yeah. And God, we have to understand that God is self-existent. He's not reliant on anything else. He is who He says He is. He just is. As a matter of fact, when He reveals Himself to Moses, right? Like Moses, in the whole grand scheme of things, God shows up to Abraham, promises him that he will be a man of many nations, that he will be blessed, a father of many nations, and he'll be blessed. It makes a promise to him, and then promises him that his offspring would outnumber the stars and the sand on the beach. And then his sons go into slavery in Egypt for 400 years. So for 400 years, people don't hear from God. Like as a matter of fact, like they think God left them to die. And so when Moses goes to the burning bush, he asks, like this voice that he hears, because he says, I hear the cries of my people. I am the God of, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moses goes, well, who should I say sent me? Well, Moses is coming from an Egyptian culture where you had Ra, where you had Osiris, where you had
Other
a
Egyptian
moon
gods.
and whatever the dog one was, Set. And you have all these different gods, and they have names, and they have characteristics, and they have faces. And Moses gets a burning bush that doesn't appear to ever actually burn. And then Moses is like, "Listen, I know all of these Egyptian gods. Who am I supposed to tell my people that sent me?" And God says, "I am. Tell them I am sent you." And right off the bat, he's saying like, I'm not like these other. I'm not like these other gods. I'm not like these other people that you've heard of. I'm not like these other gods that your people have worshipped. I'm not like these other gods that your people have come to hear of. I am.
Yeah. That's good.
Colossians 1, 15 through 17 says this: the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and things on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. God is independent, self-reliant. He exists. He just is. Another important aspect of God. We covered this on an episode titled, Does God Change? The answer, no. That's in Malachi 3:6.
Well, yeah, let's cite our sources.
Malachi 3:6. I, the Lord, do not change. Done.
Cool. Next one. No, but we have a whole episode on this. Go check it out. But basically, like, God is the same now and forever, and this leads into our next point. God is infinite.
Wait. Before we do that, that's a good thing that God does not change. Right? Like, because the God that promised you salvation, the God that promised you freedom, the God that promised to free you from your addictions, from your sin, from your past, the one that promises to bring you from death to life, He's the same God. He does not change. When it comes to like whatever we're going through God is consistent. Although our circumstances might change, although our life might get difficult, although this might change, although we might get news of cancer, although we might get news of sickness, although somebody might pass away, although we might hit the lottery and because God does not change. That is a good thing. God isn't on, God is not emotional. He has emotions, but God is not like on all these emotional roller coasters. Like 1 minute he's this, 1 minute he's that. Like God is consistent. God does not change.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of leads into our next defining characteristic of God, which is God is infinite. So God does not change and he's infinite. That means he was the exact same all the way back in Genesis, right? He was the same in Exodus, and he was the same during the time Jesus was alive, and he's the same now. He's the most, if you were to, in the story of the Bible, if you talk about stories at all, you have, character development and consistency, right? God is the most consistent character you'll ever find, right? He is the same throughout all time, and that's incredible. And Revelations 1:8 says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. So God is never changes, and he's always here, and he's always all-powerful. He's always almighty.
Yeah. And the interesting point about this one is that in God being infinite, we cannot know God exhaustively, meaning because God is larger than our minds can comprehend, he is infinite. We can't know all of the things about God, but we can know him truthfully. We can know him for who he truly is. Why? Same, reason that we know relationship, because God has defined himself. God has introduced himself. God has said who he is, right? So back to relationships, I don't get to make up things about God, although he's infinite, because he's already put parameters on who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. God, dang, I almost forgot what I was going to say. But God is infinite, and because he's so infinite, and because who he is so unfathomable to us, he's revealed parts of himself, and that's and the parts that he's revealed to himself are also, some of the parts are stuff that he's put in us, like the fruits of the Spirit, like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and all that. But there's so much more to God that's so beyond us, that is unachievable and unfathomable.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking.
That's the one
of.
you're going for.
But it's kind of tough to think about, right? Because we always we need something to grasp onto, right? We're I need infinite, really, but that's where faith comes in. And God's revealed himself to us in the ways that he needs to. He hasn't revealed too much, and he hasn't revealed too little.
Yeah.
Next one. Man, we're really powering through these. God is all-knowing, and everything good and truthful is of God.
Oh.
God is the ultimate judge. What God says is good, and what he says is bad is bad.
Mm.
And God is the definition of truth, right? God created truth, so he gets to determine what truth is and isn't.
We should take a pause here real quick, because that's again one of these things that's relevant in today, as people are deconstructing their faith, or people are just trying to figure out life in general. Is there's almost no standard of absolute truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in John chapter 14 verse 6, Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one can know God, no one can come to the Father except through me. And so we have all of these people trying to live their truths. Well, that might work for you, Rowan, but that doesn't work for me. You might see God this way, but I just don't see God that way. You might think that God is black and white about sin. I think God is a little bit more gray than you would think. No. Right? Jesus is truth. God is truth. And I like that you brought that up, because if there is no standard of truth, that is what Jesus is. That is who Jesus is. He is our standard of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to God being consistent, going back to God being, like independent and self-reliant, and God being unchanging, God is truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good that he exists outside of our opinion. And I say that because if we try to base things off of our truths, right? My truth could just be a flat out lie, but it's my truth, and I could try to force you to play along with it. Like right now, I could walk outside and be like, you know what? I drive a Bentley. And
which he does.
Well, I
was thinking money.
Oh, if only. Listen, sponsor us. Hit our
shout out Bentley.
Shout out sponsor us. Shout out. Go to SoIWasThinking.com. Hit the support us page, and drop some dollar bills, y'all.
So that we can drive Bentleys.
So that we can
Jesus.
Support cool places like Cool Beans, and keep growing our podcast. Anyway. Bentley. What was I saying about the Bentley? Oh, I could go out there and be like, yo, I drive a Bentley, but the truth is I drive a 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee with rust on it.
A beautiful Jeep Cherokee.
Beautiful, yeah.
By that.
Yeah, with rust.
Yeah, the rust decals are next level.
Yeah. And I could, I could try to make you live my truth, but if you take one look at my car, there is a standard of truth. It's like, that's not a Bentley. Mm-hmm. And I could be like, well, yes, it is. You don't know that. And you just look at the front of my car and it says Jeep.
Yeah.
And it's a Grand Cherokee. So, I mean, that's a decent example. But if we don't have absolute truth, then we can just keep making things up about God. But it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to know God is truthful and God is good. Because often we kind of dance around what we think God thinks is sin and what's not. And we kind of make it all fluffy so that Christianity seems nice when God is very black and white about what he accepts and what he doesn't. There is no gray area for God. And I think it's important to understand we don't know better than God. Because often we do. A lot of the times we're I hear you, God, but I think my way's better. I'm pretty sure.
I do that all the time.
Doing. Yeah.
Especially in traffic. God, I hear you telling me to be patient and kind to people, but this guy's an idiot.
Yeah, I feel that so much.
But here's how we know that God knows everything, that he's all-knowing. 1 John chapter 3, verse 20, the Apostle John is talking about sin in the previous verses, but he says this: if our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. There it is. He knows everything.
God knows everything. There you go. That comes from John himself.
Good, the bad, and the ugly. God knows everything. God is also a triune God, meaning he is 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. Did you say a tricycle?
Yeah.
Sorry, man, we're closed. No, she wasn't trying to get in here, but it was funny.
I was genuinely concerned that somebody was just going to walk up.
Just going to walk in our shot? Yeah. No. Sorry. God is a triune God. He is 3 in 1. That is important to understand. Does it make sense? Is it easy to understand? No.
4-leaf clover. 3-leaf clover.
That's just a regular clover. The 3 leaves are the common ones. The 4-leaf is a rare one.
I don't know. It's whatever saying. No. 4-leaf clover.
No, that's why everybody looks for the 4-leaf clover.
I'm pretty sure that.
I'm not arguing with you.
But that's what St. Patrick. That's why that's around. Because St. Patrick.
Planted
3-leaf clover.
4-leaf clover. He has a 4-leaf clover.
Do you not know the story about St. Patrick?
It's not 3 leaves. It's not the 3-leaf clover. You could get those anywhere.
I understand that the 4-leaf clover is the lucky one, but the 3-leaf clover is what he used.
So what's the 4? Why is the big deal about the?
Because there was 3.
I don't know. Okay, go
the
on.
The 4-leaf clover. I can't believe you've never heard, and you call yourself a Christian. Wow, I'm better than you? Cool. All right. So St. Patrick's big thing, and this is the reason why St. Patrick's Day is all green and stuff, is because people were having a hard time understanding like the Trinity, like God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So he used the 3-leaf clover to say there's 3 cloves, but it's all a part of the same plant. It's 3 things, but it's all one, and that's how he explained it, and that's where like clovers come from, in St. Patrick's Day. Did you seriously not know that?
No, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Really?
But I'm gonna be honest with you. Even that's a bad explanation for the Trinity, because they're all. Yes, they're all part of the same thing, but there is still hierarchy in their relationship. It is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And well, anyway, let's get to this. Genesis 1:26, and then God said, "Let us make man in our image, and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, and over the livestock, and all the wild animals, and over the creatures that move along the ground." God, from the beginning, is plural. He is talking to himself. He is counseling with himself. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And then we have the baptism of Jesus, where we see, like God the Father. We hear the voice in the sky saying, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. And we have the dove come down and rest on Jesus. And then we have Jesus himself, the Trinity. And then in Matthew 28, verse 19, as part of the Great Commission, Jesus says, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit." God reveals himself as 3 in 1. Here's what you need to know about the Trinity, that they are eternal. They are all eternal. Hold on, let me get my notes.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Oh, no, all my notes are recording us. They are co-equal. Or no, there's a hierarchy to them. I need my notes.
Stop
We're
looking.
not going to get it. We're not going to get it. I don't have it memorized.
Wow. This didn't come up during our planning? I can't believe
It did. It was on my notes. I thought you wrote it down.
Stop shouting.
I can't.
Honestly.
Sorry.
There's a microphone hooked up. You're about to blow it out.
Chris said I won't blow this thing
Pause.
out. But they are 3 in 1. They are forever God, and they are, what's the third thing? They're all God. Listen, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to make it up for you guys in this episode. I'm going to post a thing on our Instagram talking about the Trinity and some of these things about God. So stay tuned for that.
Look for a carousel.
Look for a carousel. Rowan's going to make it.
Yeah, totally. For sure. But yeah, God is 3 people, but is 1 God. Each. That's the best way I can describe it.
Each person?
Yeah. 1. Anyway.
You lost me there.
I don't know how. How much clearer could I get?
Much clearer.
You're lost. We all know who's the Holy One around here.
Jesus. What's the last thing?
Last but not least, God is wrathful.
This is a hard one for people.
Yeah, we don't like thinking of God as wrathful, but he is. He vehemently hates sin. Hates it with a passion.
Can we just take a pause? He said vehemently, which is an SAT word. Write that down. Well, it should be. It's not like
what
officially.
What did you get on your SATs?
I never took them. I didn't go to college. Shout out other options.
Shout out starting a podcast.
Shout out sponsors. Because I didn't go to college. No, but that was a good word. He absolutely intensely hates sin.
Yeah, and let's look at Romans 1:18 through 25, where it says, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since that may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, with being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore, God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. That was a lot.
That was a lot. But those are, I mean, wait, no, keep that up. These are pretty much our closing thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Like, so that first chunk right there, verses 18 through 20, God hates sin. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven, and we don't like that. We don't like that God is wrathful. We don't like that God takes vengeance. But again, it goes back to God being holy. If God is holy, there is no room for God, and there's no room for sin anywhere near God. God hates sin. And God not only hates sin because it diminishes his holiness, but God hates sin because of what it does to his creation, to us.
Mm-hmm.
We are precious in God's eyes. We are his children, and sin destroys our lives. And God hates sin, but here's why we need to define God, is because although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God or gave thanks him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and reptiles and animals and the universe and crystals and Ouija boards and this. And God became an energy, and God became your thoughts and your opinions, and God became your bank account, and God became your political party, and God became this, and God became that. Oh, hello, someone else is trying to pull up.
That's cool.
We're close, honey.
A wedgie board. That sounds
a Ouija, not wedgie.
Sounds like it would hurt.
Yeah. That a wedgie board would hurt, but a Ouija board, you're playing with demons. Anyway, that would hurt even more. There's movies about that, why you don't play with Ouija boards.
Exorcist, The Room.
The Room?
Onward.
Onward? I don't think you watched that movie.
No, it is full of demons.
Verse 25, they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen.
Amen.
And that's really what this episode is about. That's really what this podcast is about. We want to make God not weird, and we want to make God known, but we want to make God known as he wants to be known.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly defined himself, and we've given you a ton of verses, and I feel like we can, give you a bunch more if you have any questions, or if you want to DM us, or if you whatever on Instagram.
Go to our website. You can actually email us.
You can email us, yeah.
You can ask us questions, and that question may be featured on an episode. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. But it's just interesting. If you want to get to know God, you can't make him in your image. You can't make him line up with your ideologies. You can't force him to be part of your political party. You can't force him to be part of your routine. You can't put him in a box, put him in a bubble, and make him cute, and just put a little cross in your house and say, "Oh my God, look at that, that's God, isn't he good?" Because really, us. Yeah, because he's so much more, and if right thinking about God leads to right believing about God, which leads to knowing God properly,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we define God and we have a good basic understanding of who he is, so that we know him so that we're not worshiping the wrong thing.
Yeah.
We
don't want to give you guys false information. We want to make God seem accessible. We want to make God seem like He's there for you, all that. But we don't want to
Represent.
that word.
Misrepresent.
There we go. Represent. There. I can speak. But yeah. That was a good episode. That was a nice one.
I was.
Hope you guys learned a lot. Quiz coming out soon, so take notes. I hope you were taking notes.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to fail finals.
Psh.
Got to
Tell
study
me
those
about
SATs.
Got to study the vehemently.
The
Vehemently.
SATs, ACTs, TCTs, PCPs, all of the P's, T's, all the acronyms. Study them all.
Yeah. By the way, we do not endorse PCP, which is a drug. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, feel free to like us on Instagram at @SoIWasThinking_podcast. You can check us out on Facebook. You can head to SoIWasThinkingPodcast.com. We're on Spotify,
TikTok.
iTunes, Anchor.fm. Oh, we're on TikTok.
Yep.
We have a YouTube channel, So I Was Thinking Podcast. You can
So
check
if
us
you
out
want
there.
to see our beautiful faces
In 4K.
and 30 FPS,
Yeah.
check us out.
Check us out.
Best quality you could ever ask for.
And once again, thank you to Cool Beans for hosting us as we record this podcast. As Chris and Rabbit Hole Records work their way back from bankruptcy and losing the studio to Bingo. Peace out, guys.
Don't worry.